How you doing? There's a lot of different metal out there, billion different kinds, all around the world. Me, personally, I like it a little saucy, with a little bit of the Mediterranean. Uh, One of my favorites is the Greek black metal scene, Rotting Christ, Necromantia, Varathron, Thou Art Lord. It's a little bit more well known, at least like amongst black metal aficionados. Rotting Christ is a pretty big band overall. The Italian black metal scene, it's a little bit more underneath. Um, there are some big bands that I'm gonna get to, but it's a little bit more obscure. So figured I'd jump in. We got to start from the beginning. We just have to. So of course, Black Sabbath. Tony Iommi. We got Tony Iommi. He was the first. I'm not gonna go through every Tom, Dick, and Susie heavy metal band and rock and roll of the era. So I want to start with like kind of like the early '80s Black Sabbath worship bands that sprouted. First and foremost is Black Hole. Black Hole. They kind of started in the early '80s. Like their music is very obviously Black Sabbath worshipy, just like any other doom and like proto doom bands. But they throw in a lot of like weird shit. You just gotta listen to it. Like the '70s prog rock, kind of like psychedelic sort of thing. And there's Paul Chain. Paul Chain is a really interesting character in this whole arena. I'm still waiting on the Wyatt X Him Paul Chain video. But he started off in fellow Italian metal band Death SS, which I'm gonna get to later. After falling out with that group, he started Paul Chain Violet Theater. Violet Theater, yeah, and it kind of has like a similar Black Sabbath worship, '70s prog rock psychedelic sort of thing, but um, it's very very weird, very very odd. Unabashed is a word I would use to describe it. Um, and then I think it was '86 or '87. Paul Chain left this group and then just did his own shit, just called Paul Chain. Um, and it just kind of like ramped up his quirkiness to another level. Um, Very very odd, very, very odd, but like it's really cool. Like it's not going to be like metal that gets your heart going, although there is like some there's riffage, especially for the time period being like mid '80s. I think their albums came out in like '88, '89. It obviously isn't on the same caliber as the thrash and like death metal bands of that time. Um, but it's still very interesting. Like definitely give it a listen when you're inebriated on something, if you know what I mean. According to like the legend, he worked with over 50 musicians over the course of like the couple years he did music, and I don't know exactly what year, but he converted to a Jehovah's Witness, which is what kind of caused the fracture of him and Death SS. So just like a really wacky guy. His vocals are all just like phonetic random shit that just fits the like flow of the music. Like there's no actual lyrics. Just really weird, like um quirky, idiosyncratic kind of musical genius. And then, as I mentioned before, Death SS, which is like a cult followed band. The SS stands for Steve Sylvester, the vocalist, by the way. You can look at this if your sketch alarm is going off. Read that. But yeah, Steve Sylvester. All right, but they're like they were a originator of like the occult, satanic kind of thematics. Very very like very grandiose, very theatrical. Um, they are a heavy inspiration on Ghosts, which take with that what you will. Um, don't look at me. A lot of it musically is very silly. Um, Definitely not for everyone. It's not like the most extreme or intense music by far. Um, but there are a lot of cool moments, like very cool, authentic, evil and like sinister sounding moments. With that like signature eccentricity and like theatrical showboatiness. Um, Particularly like on those late '80s albums. In Death of Steve Sylvester is definitely my favorite one, just for the sound of it. I'm a sucker for like that late '80s kind of production. The later albums, I really don't ask me. Don't ask me on whatever the fuck the one that came out a couple years ago is. In Death of Steve Sylvester is definitely the best one. I also have Do What Thou Wilt, which came out in '96, I think. There's a lot of like semi-industrial kind of sounds to it that make it kind of interesting. Like every song is sort of hit or miss. Like one song you could be like, wow, like this is actually really cool. It's like really evil and like epic sounding, and then the next one is just really fucking stupid. Last couple bands, like Death SS in particular, call themselves horror rock or like horror metal, something like that. Definitely like more attached to the horror aesthetic and the like I said, like theatrical showboatiness. Where we really get into like the genuine extreme metal from Italy is in the wake of the first wave of black metal with Venom and Bathory. Um, Kind of like in the first wave black metal discussion is like the tree of like, do you take the Venom route? Do you take the Bathory route? Which on its face like it doesn't really mean that much. But the predominant like first extreme Italian metal band is sometimes called the Italian Venom, and this is of course Bulldozer. Bulldozer is one of my favorite bands. What's cool about them is they kind of have the um, like the theatrics and like the eccentricity of those horror metal bands, but with the actual like sonic extremity, with like the faster pace, the more intense instrumentals, the harsh vocals, the vocals, especially on um, The Day of Wrath, which came out in 1985, are really really extreme, and like the like the mixing is just super raw and brutal for the time. One of my favorite albums. The Final Separation is really good too, but it's in some ways like sort of a step back from The Day of Wrath. Um, and then the next two, IX or Nine in 1987, and then Neurodeliri in '88 are two of my favorite albums ever. They're very each one is a little bit different. Neurodeliri is definitely more like pure thrash, a little bit more like technicality to it. Um, but every album has just like um, frantic intensity with this. I'm gonna always come back to this earnestness, the super authentic display of doing what you want, basically. And it's very synonymous with that like proto black metal era. That's why Bulldozer is usually thrust into that kind of category of first wave proto black metal. Um, Even though I mean, like the vocals and like there's a lot of like frantic D beat like drumming, um, but it's very much kind of early thrash sort of sound, if you had to categorize, if you had to like strictly categorize it. But again, like each album has just like a plethora of super epic harmonized solos. Um, a lot of like desperation. It feels like just very awesome stuff. One of my favorites. And then in this category of hard to exactly pin down, but still dark and evil, intense, extreme metal for the time period, is Necrodeath. This is also one of my favorite albums, Into the Macabre, in 1987. Super extreme for 1987. Just like a really raw, brutal mix to it. Just so, really fucking awesome. Their next album, Fragments of Insanity, is also really good, but I mean, nothing they did comes even close to Into the Macabre. They have a billion different albums. I haven't listened to like the most recent 6 of them. I really don't give a shit. Their first 2 are just so good, and the attachment to the time period is so like mystical almost that like it just can't be beat in my opinion. Breaking the action game. Their minds are pleased with fear. Next, pretty much like under the same descriptive categories as Necrodeath is Schizo. Just really awesome for the time period. Mainframe Collapse is their first and best in my opinion. Came out in 1989. Just really fucking awesome, extreme 80s metal, and that's my favorite. This is like the golden age of my taste. Like just like super extreme, dark and evil metal in a time period where super extreme, dark and evil metal wasn't even in the realm of possibility, in the layman's mind, you know. So it's like they like there's just so much character to it, so much like desperation. It's really awesome, really awesome. Next, like as we get into the turn of the decade from the 80s to the 90s, this is where Italian black metal sort of like comes into its own, with the big daddy being Mortuary Drape, probably the most popular Italian extreme metal band. Just really awesome stuff. One of my favorite bands overall. Again, like there's that earnestness to it where they don't give a fuck. It's interesting because during this time period of the second wave of black metal and like the Norwegian explosion and like the Scandinavian shit, you know, the Italian black metal bands, Mortuary Drape in particular, they never went too far away from their heavy metal / thrash metal roots. They always remained grounded in that kind of essence of heavy metal, if that makes sense. They never went like super off the deep end with like crazy insane blast beats and everything. It's still sonically really extreme, but like there's that epicness and character to it that makes it really different in terms of, you know, broad second wave black metal. I have Secret Sudaria is probably my favorite. There's also Tolling 13 Nell, which kind of has a little bit more of like an experimental character, has more like keyboard, synth, and like atmosphere building. But their later albums are actually really, really good too. The most recent Black Mirror came out in 23, I think. Kind of like has that same essence to it that their earlier albums did. Their first one being All the Witches Dance, which I want a first press CD of, but they're so rare and so expensive. So let me know if you could send me a first press All the Witches Dance, please. About as close as we can get to that classic second wave black metal sound, while still retaining that earnest character of Italian black metal, is Necromass. This debut album coming out in 94, it actually features Wildness Perversion, the vocalist from Mortuary Drape on it. It's really cool. Probably I'm maybe more familiar sounding than Mortuary Drape, which kind of has like a stripped down sound to it. Has more of a, like I said, like classic second wave black metal sound, but still like throws in a lot of weird shit. This album is actually really interesting. The production of it, they could only record at night while the studio was closed, so they kind of like secretly recorded everything in the middle of the night. It's kind of interesting. This kind of arena is where we start to see the kind of like the age old black metal question of like routes to take. Do you take the more raw, bestial, brutal kind of route, or do you go more like a emperor symphonic, beautiful, majestic kind of route? Obviously, a lot of bands mix in between. Like there isn't really that much of a discrepancy altogether. But in terms of the Italian black metal scene, there definitely is a lot more of beautiful, majestic, pretty symphonic kind of thing. Mortuary Drape has sort of those, has like interludes and shit, like especially on their later albums, especially Tolling 13 Nell has a lot of those like pretty atmospheric parts. Necromass definitely throws a lot of that kind of thing in there. But as we get mid to late 90s, early 2000s, there's really kind of an explosion of Italian symphonic black metal. One of my favorites, Funeral Oration. This album came out in 96. It's really cool. There's, between every single song, there's like a symphonic pretty interlude, but it still has a lot of the intensity and extremity of black metal. So it's not too pretty if you don't like that kind of thing, you know. There's also Cultus Sanguine, which this is a split with Seth, which is one of my favorite bands, but it's a French band. Um, there's really just like an explosion of symphonic, um, very like melodic kind of black metal with a ton of synth and keyboard, a ton of shit that like really borders on early proto dungeon synth kind of thing, um, which is still really cool, but it's not for everyone. There is that like cheesy power metal kind of character to it, especially with a band like Nazgul, which like 70% of it is just like keyboards and synths, but it still has, like tremolo guitar, has blast beats and double bass and shit. There's also Stormlord, which their more recent albums are definitely more power metal esque, which I'm not really a fan of. But this is, what do they describe themselves? They call themselves something like, they say Stormlord plays extreme epic metal exclusively. So like that kind of thing. Like it's not quite power metal yet, but it's still like very epic and fantastical. And part of what kind of filters me in this area is the production. A lot of the more symphonic and nigh power metal, like blackened power metal kind of thing, the production is just too good. Like there isn't enough rawness, there isn't enough brutality to it. So that's what, in my opinion, like separates what I like from what I don't like. There's a band like Darkened, which has a lot of that same fantastical and epic symphonic black metal character to it, but the production isn't clean. Like it still has that rawness to it, which I really like. Also a band like Abhor, which this album came out in 2011, but they've been around since I think the late 90s. And it's a bit more slow, bit more like depressive, but like very dark, sinister, plotting. It's really cool if you're not a fan of the more like like oh kind of thing. There's also something like Evil, EVOL, which they like market themselves more as like a dungeon synth Mortis thing, but it's has a lot of black metal to it. Like there's a lot of intense instrumental parts, but it still has like the medieval synth keyboard atmosphere to it. And then, like I was saying, in this explosion of really melodic, symphonic, theatrical black metal, There's a ton of stuff with just too much overproduction, too clean for me, not intense and dark enough, even though thematic and imagery wise it's still, like evil and occultic and whatnot. um, Stuff like Theatrice de Vampiris, there's a Opera 9, Grave Worm, there Lord Vampire, a lot of like vampiric themed stuff, but not in like a way of um like super brutal evil kind of vampire ripping your throat out. It's more of like a you know I'm Dracula, I wear a suit and a top hat, like very like prim proper. I guess the word is like gothic sort of symphonic black metal, which it's cool. Like a lot of it that I was listening to in kind of preparation for this video is a lot better than I thought it'd be, but still like there needs to be a time and a place for it. I'm not gonna listen to it at the gym or something like that. Like it's not quite my thing, but go crazy if you really like it. Just like a billion Cradle of Filth clones, essentially, which has never been one of my favorites. But I know there's a lot of people that like Cradle of Filth. So if you really like it, then definitely like go down the late 90s, early 2000s Italian symphonic black metal rabbit hole. And now we'll move away from the black metal side of things and get more into death metal, even though Italy isn't quite the epicenter of death metal. Sort of in a similar vein to the Cradle of Filth melodic symphonic black metal bands. There's Flesh God Apocalypse, which is like a melodic technical death metal band with like a lot of symphonic qualities to it, which I thought I would not like as much as I enjoyed listening to it again in preparation for this video. It's not as bad as I really thought. My biggest problem with it, and this kind of goes for those other like symphonic black metal bands I was talking about, is there's really a lack of riff. Like the guitars are just like, dun 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 dun, like just like extreme metal guitars layered into it, to serve as kind of like the metal background for whatever orchestral shit you want to throw in there, if you know what I mean. Which is like it's not like a bad thing or anything, but I mean, it's not for everyone. It's not like exactly my thing. My favorite and probably the most popular, I'm guessing, Italian death metal band is Sadist, from the early 90s. It's kind of like progressive death metal in the vein of like later Death or Atheist. Their first album, Above the Light, is so fucking good. That's kind of my go-to for Italian death metal. Then there's also a band like Willow the Wisp, or Willow Wisp? I think it's just Willow Wisp, which is kind of a similar strain of progressive death metal. Their first album, Enchiridion, I think it came out in 97. Again, like similar artsy fartsy, super progressive kind of death metal that it's not my like favorite thing ever, but it's still really cool and it has a really cool essence to it, being from that time. There's also a pretty sizable brutal death metal contingent in Italy. As far as death metal goes, I'm definitely more like the old school style, like 1988 to 1992 kind of thing. But I still like some brutal death metal. For like the more ins and outs, definitely go to Mr. Jimmy here. But there's Putridity from the early 2000s, which is like that classic brutal death metal style. I mean, like, what more do you want me to say? It's just like, you know what I mean? Later on, like 2010s, there's Devangelic, which has a bunch of members from other Italian brutal death metal bands like Corpse Fucking Art, Anthrophagus. Yeah, I mean they're like it's brutal death metal. What the fuck else you want? Well, one of my favorite Italian brutal death metal bands is Flesh Squelch Cock Suck Fuck Corpse. That's not a real band. I'm dialing it back a little bit. It's not nearly as extreme, but Doom Sword, which is epic doom and kind of like a sort of like Candlemass slash Hammer Hardy vein. Um, was some of my favorites. It's probably some of my favorite doom metal, other than Black Doom, along the lines of Ruins of Beverast. But yeah, just like really, really epic, just fucking epic. March, 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 on the march, on the march again, on the march. Another one that's sort of like a relatively newer doom metal band is Abysmal Grief, which isn't one of my favorites, but it's still like it's still cool. It's kind of like just like gothic doom, whatever. One of my favorite newer Italian doom metal bands is Gargoyle, with Hail to the Necrodoom. I think it came out in 21. Um, they call themselves, like, they call their style of music Necrodoom, which is kind of badass. Not gonna lie, but it's kind of like it's sort of Mortuary Drape with a doomier approach, kind of. But they, like, their guitars are really cool. They have like the chorus effect on it. Like Bulldozer front, like the early like speed slash thrash metal kind of approach is Hell Crash, which this album art is one of my favorites. Just like the bat, the hellish three-headed bat. It's really fucking awesome. But yeah, like I said, they're very Bulldozer-esque speed thrash heavy metal kind of thing, but with the dark blackened kind of aesthetic. Then there's a more avant-garde experimental, like atmospheric kind of black metal, Altar of Perversion. It's very interesting stuff. Each song is like 20 minutes long, but it's definitely good to listen to the whole thing in one go. And each song being that long, it's not like they're really dragging on certain parts, like it really comes together very nicely. Also in bulk, which they just came out with a new album not that long ago that's really good. It's more symphonic melodic kind of black metal. It has members from Darkened that I mentioned earlier. And then probably my favorite modern Italian black metal band is Vulture, which I'm still waiting on my CDs to arrive from fucking months ago that I ordered. But tariffs, we got those friggin' tariffs. But it's more like raw, Mortuary Drape-esque Italian black metal. There's less symphonic shit going on. There is like some more like after effects, but it's very, riffy, raw, just good black metal. They're also from Sardinia, which is pretty cool. There's not many metal bands, let alone extreme metal bands from Sardinia, and that's my ancestry. That's my bloodline. To the island. There's that. The last new band I'll talk about is Bikor Kielish. I think that's how you pronounce it. But this album just came out and has really fucking awesome album art. It's interesting, like avant-garde, experimental. I don't even know what the fuck you call it, like black death, extreme, whatever, blah. It's my only problem with it is the guitars. Like it kind of has that genty tone to it, like the dum bum dum bum bum dum. You know what I mean? But otherwise, just like really interesting compositions and cool sounds and whatnot. So I'll leave it here. Let me know if I missed. I definitely missed countless. According to Metal Archives, there's like 8,000 metal bands from Italy. So I don't think I mentioned that many. Yeah, let me know. Give me the All the Witches Dance first press CD if you have it, please. Otherwise, go fuck yourself. Go fuck yourself.